Yeah.
Hey, Vusi.
Hi.
Hey, man. You made
How
it.
are you? Are you well?
Yeah, very well, very well. How about you?
Let me get the height on this right. Let me get the height on this right so you can get me in.
Sure,
I
sure.
think that works. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can everybody hear Vusi? Can everybody hear Vusi? Somebody say yes. Somebody write yes. Somebody just wrote some
Yes.
nice. Can everybody see Vusi, ladies and gentlemen? Please say yes. Somebody write yes. Okay, good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey, welcome. How is your daughter? Vusi, can you hear me? Vusi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Sorry, brother.
Okay,
I can hear you.
that's okay. That's okay. How is your daughter?
Look, it's fine. Joburg is carrying on.
Yeah,
There's a lot to do. There's a hell of a lot of work to do. So I think we're all focusing our attentions on getting work done.
excellent. Let's get started, Vusi. I'm going to introduce you first.
So, you're gonna do what?
I'm going to introduce you through
Yeah, I
just
mean,
a
go
brief.
for it. I
brief
think I don't know if it's necessary, but let's do it.
let me say a couple of words. So, Vusi Thembekwayo, our guest today, is a venture capitalist, best-selling author, renowned entrepreneur, and global business speaker. He is among the top business speakers in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2019, he was the JQ Business Leader of the Year. Welcome, Vusi. Let me get started with my first question. I want to first say, though, that peace be with him. Nelson Mandela said about you that Vusi is the epitome of the South Africa for which we fought. On your LinkedIn account, you describe the Vusi Thembekwayo brand as global speaker, private equity, impact investor, international selling, best-selling author, which represents at least 3 lives for anybody, a common human being. Vusi, what is your story?
Um, sure. What's my story? Look, I'm just a human being trying to make a difference, Charles. That's really it. Um, I started out my career in public speaking. I got into corporate, and through corporate, got into corporate finance, and then, worked my way back into public speaking, traveled the world, shared my message, built a consulting firm, turned the consulting firm into a venture capital firm, turned the venture capital firm into a private equity firm. And today, we're an impact investment company that uses an impact investing company that uses private equity principles. And by the way, oh wait, I got to show you something. Hold on.
Please do.
So, so we'd announced this last year, but
Yeah.
and I haven't made a lot of noise about it, but we just won this, which is the Worldwide Finance Award Best. You see it there, Best
Yeah.
Impact Investment Firm 2020. I'd like to think, I'd like to think that the work we do is making a difference, making an impact, and we have very big goals and very big dreams for the stuff we'd like to do into the future. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. What's the biggest opportunity you have faced in your lifetime? Why? And what shift did it create in you personally, in your behavior and your ecosystem?
Opportunity. Whew, it's a tough question. Quite warm in here. Look, Giles, let me answer your question this way.
Sure. Yeah.
My greatest gift has been people who believed in me.
Hmm.
And what I would wish for every person in this conversation is that God blesses you with people who believe in you. And the reason I'm answering your question that way is because it's hard for me to think about the greatest opportunity I've had when I've had so many. And every single opportunity that I've had it purely because somebody believed in me. I've had it because somebody took a chance. I've had it because somebody saw what I could become, not what I was, right? So So I think that that's a big part of the success matrix, is just to be gifted with people who believe in you, who see you for what you can do, not for what you are.
Okay, Vusi, I have to tell you, can you hear me still?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, the people who are listening are not hearing you very well.
Okay, I'll tell you what we do. Let
Sure.
me connect again. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
I'm gonna jump out. I'll jump back in.
Very good. So Vusi's coming out and he's coming right back. Okay, we'll have Vusi in a second, ladies and gentlemen. The sound wasn't very good. Thank you for letting me know. And we're just fixing that. Okay, here we go. All right, we'll have him in a second. All right. So I'm not sure we'll have much time to answer questions, specific questions, but we're just getting Vusi back on so that you can actually hear him. You couldn't hear him very well before. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. He's coming on. All right.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, much better, much better. So,
I think that the issue was on my side. It was probably the phone that I was using, but let's carry on.
No worries. So yeah, you were in the middle of answering this question about the biggest opportunity that faced you and how it changed you.
Yeah, I think, so I've had several. I think the ability to speak at the World Bank, still the only African speaker to speak at the World Bank by invitation, huge. You're speaking to global capital about how it organizes itself, about how it makes priorities, about whether or not it prioritizes particularly the developing world and specifically Africa, right? So that was massive for me, the ability to speak at the Australian Houses of Parliament. And I was 17 then. So I want to say this because I think it's really important. So first, I've been gifted incredible people who have given me opportunity and have believed in me. And I don't want to undermine that gift, because my story, my life, Gilles, is not possible without the people who have helped me. And I don't want people to watch this conversation and walk away thinking, oh my God, this guy's amazing. I have been gifted the time, the space, the opportunity by God's incredible grace, and I've been able to meet that opportunity halfway. So at every stage of every opportunity that I've had, I have learned to become somebody new, because I think, and just as a final thought for you on this, I think the greatest currency in the 21st century is going to be your ability to unlearn who you were. That takes a lot of work. There are a lot of people in this conversation who have been taught who they are. Society taught them, the country they comes from taught them, the tribe they belong to taught them, the school you went to taught them, so socialization in the community they grew up in taught them. We've all been taught who we are. But if you really want to transcend earthly limitations and achieve your God-given platform, you're going to have to unlearn that, right? So you're going to have to unlearn who society told you you are. And by the way, society ain't gonna like that. Anytime you go against it, it's going to have stuff to say. But I think it's just going to be important for yourself to be honest with yourself, to make sure that you're fulfilling your dreams on earth. So that's what I'll say on that.
This is a fantastic and very powerful way of putting it. Unlearn what society wanted you to be, that you have learned.
Yeah.
When I think of you, your brand, the following words come to mind: storyteller, public speaker, extraordinary marketeer, authentic sales guru, just to name a few. I have two questions in one. What words would you use to describe yourself, and why you are effective at what you do? So that's one question. And the next question is, what skill sets have you had to develop to become who you are?
Sure. So what words would I use to describe me? I would say, damn, that's such a hard question. Constantly evolving. And, you know, so it's very likely that there are people who watch interviews of mine that I did 15 years ago and go, well, he sounds the same, but he sounds different because of the things he's saying. So constantly evolving, I think, is a big part of how I would describe myself. Student of life, very much a student of life. I've given up trying to be the master. I've got to tell you, I'm at the stage in my life where I recognize that I'm going to be a constant and a perpetual black belt, a white belt, and that's okay. I don't need to be the black belt. I will constantly be striving for more, for better, and learning. So I think those are the words that I would use to describe. There's one that I'm missing. The world's greatest dad. I am an amazing dad. I really am.
I have to take some lessons. My daughter will tell you I have to take some lessons from you. For another day. For another day. As a best-selling author, Vusi, as a best-selling author, what are some of the shifts and transformational messages you are offering us, the world, that we should think about and act upon?
Sure. So the work I do is the work I do in business, and a lot of it is around helping leaders lead. That's my forte has been around helping leaders lead. But to qualify it, it's been around helping leaders lead in a changing world. Leadership there's a lot of literature around leadership. There's a lot of literature around contextual leadership. But where we find that there is a lack of leadership is adapt themselves and their leadership style to the context in which they have to lead. So the work that I've been doing probably over the past 12 years has really just been around helping leaders lead and helping leaders lead in the context of their time, right? So there is a time to be a hard leader and to drive a hard bargain and to be unreasonable, to be completely unreasonable. If you're running a business right now, you're finding that you need to be a mix of the two. You need to be compassionate, but you also need to be able to drive a hard bargain. And so understanding the context is very, very important.
Excellent. Context is really important. What anecdotes could you tell us? Anecdotes about you, about the business, about transforming leaders and helping them lead?
I swear to God, Giles, it's not me.
No worries, no worries.
It ain't me, brother. It ain't me.
That's okay. That's okay. So what anecdotes could you share with us? Just one, maybe that would strike us.
I had the great privilege of coaching a CEO, female CEO of a large financial services group operating out of Botswana. And by the way, if there are any women from Botswana here watching, I need to find a reason to come and settle in Botswana, because the women there, oh my God. That was a joke. That was a complete joke. So she, you know, I was doing some executive coaching with her. Her and I worked together for about 2 years. She took over a business that was ailing. She had the responsibility to turn the business around. And this was interesting, and I think a lot of women will identify with this. The challenge she had was the internal story. And I think there are a lot of people in this conversation who have the challenge of the internal story. And here's what that means. In her mind, she had an internal story of how a female should behave, how a woman should behave, and how a woman in corporate should behave. But that story didn't fit the script she needed to play. And the script she needed to play was of a tough leader who had a very short space of time to make very hard decisions. By definition, you have to bring a fairly masculine energy to that space. If you think for yourself about Angela Merkel, for instance, even whether or not you agreed with her politics, and I agree with some part of her politics, not all of them, Margaret Thatcher, these are women who led in very difficult changing contexts. And so when you read their body language, when you read how they approach leadership, it comes across as fairly masculine. And the challenge she was having was being the tough masculine energy that the moment required of her. So the work that I did with her really was around helping her make those decisions. And I remember she had a board meeting, and there was a particular board member who was constantly nagging, constantly negative, constantly trying to destroy what she was trying to build. And she had never confronted this board member, because remember this, right? It's easy to be confrontational when you have authority. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you and I have a professional relationship and I report to you, it's easy for you to be difficult and confrontational with me because you have authority over me, right? What people find really, really hard is managing peers, and as they call it in the States, managing upwards, right? And so the challenge she had was, here's this board member, hugely influential with shareholder, can sway board decisions, but is constantly negative. And I said this to her. I said this, and this is a soundbite that I would say to the South African president if he asked me, but he probably won't. 6 months into any job, every leader is responsible for the team they have. 6 months into any job. Now, what that means is you can take over a team that you didn't appoint. But after 6 months, you've appointed everybody in that team, either implicitly or explicitly by saying, this is the job you have, or implicitly by not removing them from something they're not suitable for. You see a lot of this in political leadership, where particularly African leaders don't have the courage to make the decisions they need to make and move people out, right? So I said to her, it's your team now. This is your board. You've been here for 2 years. This person has been here for 4. This is your board now. You're responsible. And she went into a board meeting about an hour and a half, 2 hours into the board meeting. As you might expect, the person riled things up and went negative, and she confronted him. And I love the way she tells me the story, because the confrontation happened in Setswana, but she confronted him. She was quite abrupt. She went after him, right? And that board member changed. And I think the lesson for a lot of us in that is this, that some things in your life will stay the way they are because you're not calling on them to be the way you need them to be. So a part of the wisdom of leadership is having the courage to call the things to be what you need them to be. And you can't run away from it, right? Because you know, as my father used to say, no matter how fast you run, your problems can always run faster than you. So you're going to have to address those issues.
Excellent, thank you. A couple more questions. One linked to women leadership. We are in 2021, and yet in most parts of the world, many women are with equal or better skill than men.
Yeah.
The short end of the stick. They get the short end of the stick. Whether they are in the corporate world or whether they're entrepreneurs. What can we men, do to contribute to the improvement of women's opportunities, whether they are, again, in the corporate world or they are entrepreneurs?
Nothing. I'm very much with Jordan Peterson on this. And it's a fairly controversial point. And I'm sure that there are women leaders in this conversation who will not agree with me, and I'm happy to debate the point if we don't agree. I think that the responsibility for the ascension of women in leadership rests with women. That's not to say that men are not accountable for the results of the ascension of women in leadership. We're all accountable in society, right? So if our society is distorted, if our society is patriarchal, if our society embraces toxic masculinity, if our society subjugates women, then men are accountable for that. And men must be held responsible for that. But the responsibility to ascend as a leader rests on you, nobody else. So I think that a big part of the work, you know, if you think about, you know, just think about the world, right? You think about Black Lives Matter, you think about the LGBTQI movement. These are examples of what I'm saying. These are previously marginalized groups who've recognized that their emancipation is their responsibility, nobody else's. So the liberation of women in the boardroom, the ascension of women in leadership is the responsibility of women. And the things that they have to do is they have to call out patriarchy where they see it. They're going to have to develop the courage to be honest and courageous with their truth. And some do and some are. And they're also going to have to develop the ability to support each other. And let me just say this very quickly, and I quib on this, but you know, if you'll excuse my random musing on this. Supporting each other as a community doesn't require that we agree on everything. It also doesn't require that we like each other. What it does require is that we see and understand that we share a destiny. So there are many, many people of color with whom I don't agree. I don't agree with their politics, I don't agree, but I do the best I can not to be the naysayer. There is a difference between being a detractor, being neutral, and a promoter. And in my mind, if you are for an agenda, you can't be a detractor of people working in that agenda, even if you don't agree with everything they say. So, Gilles, you might be, you might be for keeping golden cats. I'm a dog guy, right? Now, I'm not going to actively promote that you should keep golden cats or Garfield, but that doesn't mean I now have to go outside and say, well, you know, Gilles is a cat. And I think there's a lot of that happens in spaces where a demographic is looking for representation. Happens a lot. Yeah. It happens in the Black community a lot. It happens with women a lot. It happens with people in the LGBTQI plus community a lot, because we are not in the majority in most spaces of power, authority, and leadership. And so when one of us ascends, we have to be careful not to be the ones who are pulling that person down, because they said something we don't agree with. Their ascension is our collective growth. They give us the permission to be in those rooms, to be in that space.
I love the way you say that, and I love the analogy of the crabs also that you have in a different video, but that's for another day. We have listeners from around the world, in Asia, in Europe, in America, and obviously a lot in Africa. What would you say, what would you give as an advice to people who want to become entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, investors, and public speakers in particular? This is a strong point of ours.
I would say, I would say the same thing I would say to my son if he wants to become a soccer player, which is 3 things. First, be a student of the game, right? I can't tell you how many times it happens. Somebody will DM me on Instagram or Facebook, or I'm not on Twitter anymore, by the way. My Twitter account is deleted. After this, ask me why. Ask me why, so I can tell you why.
Why?
But I'll tell you why in a minute, but let me make this point.
Okay.
So I think, so the first thing you've got to do is be a student of the game, just a student of the game. Now, to be a student of the game means that you have to know the masters and study the masters. You have to try and get close to the masters and learn, because everything everyone knows, they learned, which means with time and application, tenacity and skill, you can learn it too, right? So whether you want to become a banker, you want to become a comedian, a speaker, an actor, you want to become a social media influencer, study the game. Study the masters, follow the masters. And in today's world of social media and the internet and connectivity, you're always a click away from reading what the masters of something have to say. So when I got into venture investing, I didn't understand it. I studied the game. When I got into private equity, I understood it a bit because I'd worked in capital markets, but I studied the game. I'm still studying the game. I'm still learning. Yeah. So there are people who DM me, who watch a video of mine and they'll, will say something about, dude, I want to become a speaker like you. How do I do it? Listen, I competed at world championship level when I was 17. I won at 17. I won again at 22. I'm 35 years old. I turned 36 in 2 months. So just so we're clear, I've got 15 years of professional public speaking experience, 20 years since the first time I got on the stage. So,
very clear, very clear.
Measure yourself, be measured with your expectations, and study the masters. And by the way, I'm still studying the masters. I'm still learning from the masters. Even, today as a speaker who's been ranked in the world top 12, I'm still studying the masters. There are still people I study and I watch and I read. I was watching a Petty Ashdown video earlier and I was like, this guy's ability to deliver is incredible. Slow to start, but the minute he fires, he's unbelievable. So you're constantly studying the game. You constantly have to be sharpening the sword.
I hear you, I feel you. I constantly study you, and I study also Lisa Nichols.
Humbled.
So you've given.
Wait, Giles, we needed to discuss the Twitter thing.
Yes, the Twitter thing. Why did you switch? Because I'm thinking of it too, but why did you switch off Twitter?
So when I first got on Twitter, Twitter was the platform for thought. That's why they created a tweet that was 120 characters. The idea was that you were supposed to take your thought and publish it. That's why in social media law, a published post is that, published, like writing a book. So when I first got on Twitter, I remember following Thembekwayo, arguably one of the greatest brand gurus of our time. These were the people I followed because Twitter was the place where considered thought was published. That's what Twitter was. It was also the place where you could meet people who didn't agree with you, who had a different worldview, but you could meet them at a peer level and have a discussion with them. One of the greatest things Twitter did, which I think is a part of why Twitter in my mind is failing now. One of the greatest things Twitter did is Twitter collapsed social hierarchy. See, Before a Twitter platform, say, you couldn't engage with Vusi on a peer-to-peer level. You couldn't tag me and say something because we don't move in the same circles. We don't occupy the same world. We don't share the same friends. So if you had an idea, a thought, or something you wanted to share with me, you had no access to me. And what Twitter did is it collapsed social hierarchy and enabled somebody with 0 followers to be able to tag Gilles, who has 100,000 followers, and have a peer-to-peer conversation. The conversation was mostly, not always, but it was mostly thoughtful conversation. That's what Twitter was. Twitter in the early days was what Clubhouse is today, in my mind, right? It was a place where people went to share thoughts and ideas. I don't want to be controversial, but that ain't what Twitter is now. It's not that. It's become a very toxic place. And it harbors, I think, the worst of us amongst us. And it's done that in part because it allows people to be anonymous. So people have no sense of empathy anymore. They have no sense of honesty, no sense of integrity. There are just some things you don't say. There's some things you don't tweet. Whether you're thinking it or not, you just wouldn't and you shouldn't say that. And you shouldn't say that for one very simple reason. It's called decency. There's no law that can govern decency. Just be a decent human being. What I've seen is it's not that. There was a young man who was trending. And I know this, by the way, so we're clear. Somebody sent me a WhatsApp saying, have you seen this? And I said, I'm not on Twitter anymore, so no. And they sent me the link and I went and clicked on the link. So I saw what the discussion was about. But there was a young man who was trending because he posted something. And another young man called him out on the thing he posted. The one was a medical doctor. The other was a fairly famed TV personality. Somebody responds to the TV personality and basically ousts him or accuses him of being a homosexual. Now, I just have one question. When you do that, who raised you? Like in what world is that human decency? First of all, what on earth does his sexuality have to do with anything? And second of all, what gives you the right? What gives you the right? And so I think Twitter has done that to society. And, you know, I pray every year when the new year breaks, you know, when most people are out partying or celebrating, I pray. And I was praying over New Year's, and I could hear God as clearly as I can hear you right now, Gilles. And he said to me, delete your Twitter account. He said a lot more than that, but that was one of the easier things for me to do. So, you know, I didn't go on Twitter and announce that I was leaving. I didn't ask for a departure party. There was no celebration. I went, deactivated, and left, because there comes a time when you recognize that if you can't choose the space, if you can't choose the quality of the people in the space you're in, you have to choose whether or not you want to be in that space. So that's why I left.
Very clear, completely understood. Let me shorten a little bit the interview as we are just beyond time. I realize you had some difficulties coming on. Let me ask you a last question. What's your final takeaway for everybody who's listening?
Hey, brother, I'm listening to
Yeah, I'm saying, what's your final takeaway for everybody who's been listening to you?
Live a life of meaning. That's it. Isn't that ultimately what we're all here for? I think that's ultimately what we're all here for. I think that whichever God or deity you praise, and I did a post the other day about that, which went viral, But whichever God or deity you praise, whichever faith or religion you follow, whatever overarching force you believe governs the universe, it's created you as a human being for a particular assignment. So live a life of meaning. Find that assignment and fulfill that assignment. And be honest with yourself. I want to say something very quickly, Gilles, because I think this is important. There is no such thing as an incompetent person, in my mind. Only a person who is not competent for the environment they are in. And I think a lot of people end up frustrated in their lives because they are in the wrong environment, and the environment is not conducive to their character, not conducive to their personality, not conducive to their talents and abilities, not conducive to their skill sets. But they stay in those environments for whatever reason. I'm married to this person for 20 years, or I've had this job for 10 years, or whatever the reason, or this is my country of birth and I've lived here my whole life. So the last message I would leave is live a life of meaning, find your assignment, fulfill that assignment, and go to the environment where your skills, capabilities, and abilities will shine.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm going to thank you, my brother. It's been a blessing, very inspiring.
Thank you,
People
Les.
have been leaving so many messages, I can't read them. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
I know that you and I have some other business to discuss. We'll schedule something through my office. I'm humbled that you've had me here, Gilles. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Vusi. Don't leave, I'm going to tell you the announcements. Vusi, thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that this was an incredible moment with one of the biggest leaders in the world, in Africa, but in the world. Next week, we will have another fabulous leader. She is listening to us. She has won the award of Best Thinker around innovation on HR in the world. Her name is Vladka Lupic. You will want to be here next week, next Thursday, same time, same place. Thank you so much for coming in. I thank Vusi again, and we look forward to meeting you soon.